real health coaches and real health practitioners getting real results for their clients and for themselves. So I'm really excited to have you join me today. And I have an awesome guest, Belinda Simpson, and she is joining me all the way from the UK. So I am in New Mexico. She is in the UK. We would love to know where you guys are joining us from today. So let me know below this video where you are joining us from. How are you today, Belinda?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm really good. Yeah, how about you? It's a bit kind of late here compared to how it is with you. Yeah, I'm really conscious of that. We're in different times of the day.
Absolutely. So it's about 8 o'clock at night for you, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me. Yeah. And the weather is incredible here right now. It's about 75 degrees. So how's the weather where you're at?
Oh, it's warm actually for the UK. Unusually warm. It's about 12 degrees. But we're kind of pretty late in our autumn now, so it's often much colder than this. Yeah.
Awesome. So everybody that's watching us, everyone that's joining us, we have a special gift for you today. So drop the word impact below, IMPACT, impact, in capital letters, and we are going to send you a adverse childhood events assessment. So it's a great assessment that you can use with yourself, or a great assessment that you can utilize with clients. So you wanted to drop the word impact below so that you can grab that assessment. Awesome. So my name is Piper Gibson. I am the Director of Course Enrollment for Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, and I am also the host of the Real Results Show. And so if you are ready to dig in, Belinda, I would love to know what inspired you to become an FDN?
Okay, so I think probably like many practitioners, I had my own health issues. I had a very successful and thriving psychology practice that provided for the NHS in England, which is the free at point of access health service. And I had a series of bereavements and really bad fall off a horse accident and got concussion and snapped my ACL, and just kind of life went on like that. And it wasn't like one trauma, it was a succession of traumas. And then an amazing woman called Judith, who was part of my team, my second in command, she got a brain tumor and died within 8 weeks, you know, which was absolutely heartbreaking. And it was kind of like the last straw of a really long succession of trauma. And I finally crashed myself to what FDNs would recognize as exhaustive stage. I was really, really ill with extremely high inflammation markers. I could barely sit up in bed. Yeah, I just was really, really poorly. But intuitively knew that going down the medical general practitioner route, although my GP was extremely supportive, that taking the kind of vast array of prescribed drugs he was offering me, I needed to, you know, in terms of the UK's NICE guidelines, wasn't for me. I instinctively knew that I needed my body to heal and that it was a whole package. So the first functional practitioner I met was in South Africa, and she was amazing and kind of really got me fascinated about functional medicine and about how our bodies work. And yeah, so I learned masses. That was 5.5 years ago. So I learned masses, and that finally got me somehow, I think just Googling it, I found out about FDN and loved listening to Reed and his podcasts, and just thought, wow, this is something I really want to do. Yeah.
I love it.
Got me in.
Interesting that you mentioned South Africa. Esther is joining us all the way from South Africa today. She says it's 10 p.m. there with lots of thunderstorms. So it is definitely a global community today, everybody. Welcome. And if you're just joining us, drop the word impact below, and we are going to send you a link for that adverse childhood assessments. So Belinda, I know that you had an existing practice in working in the UK, but how did you incorporate FDN and the lab testing into what you're currently doing?
Well, part of my kind of trauma succession of things that happened was the NHS business had to close because I was so ill, and it went out to tender and we didn't get the tender. So part of my kind of heartbreak and trauma was closing a business of 24 years. So there's been masses of learning all the way along, and I now have a very small private practice. And it's been interesting and challenging. Because the UK is very, very fixed in a medical model. So a lot of the things that we were taught in the FDN training with regard to packages and so on, like it's very, very hard to engage people with anything like that. And it is, I can't pretend it's easy. It's a rocky path in the UK to get people engaged. So it's been slow and steady, but it's also been very interesting. And actually, as I'm growing as a practitioner, I'm starting to attract more clients that are appropriate for me. But you kind of have to let go at the same time, and then by making yourself available, the right clients, come and find you.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And that was one of those things for me that when I really started sharing our own story and just letting go, that, I've had so many clients come to me that just really fit that ideal for me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how do you incorporate the lab testing? Are you using lab testing, or are you just using the DRESS?
No, I'm using the DRESS, but I also do use lab testing. It's it took a while to kind of get going and get the knowledge base. In the UK, because shipping labs from the USA is unrealistic financially and time-wise. It just really, and you can get the same labs done in the UK. So so that was a kind of journey of discovery too. My interest particularly is about trauma still, and complex trauma. And so I think the bit I'm particularly interested in is dysregulation with regard to cortisol and what happens with that. And obviously we then know that that affects everything else. But I think the thing that's particular to psychotherapy, counseling, coaching as a profession, and the relevance of that for me with regard to FDN and labs is actually that you may have someone doing, and I indeed myself on my journey, I did the DRESS program absolutely completely and just felt like I was getting nowhere. And so I got really curious about, okay, what is happening here? And a lot of it's about, if you've got complex PTSD, you will be, the symptoms are, it's a kind of overused phrase, but if you legitimately, genuinely have got PTSD and have got the symptoms, one of the kind of really common things is to be hyper-vigilant and hyper-aroused and hypersensitive, which means you are firing your cortisol and adrenaline all the time.
Right.
And certainly I remember my early Dutch test showed that I just was way overproducing. It wasn't that I wasn't producing, it was I was way overproducing and then crashing all the time. And you can't kind of get out of that cycle. So I was really interested in looking at it from, what I was really confident in is in terms of the EMDR practitioner, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So that kind of deals with the psychological trauma. But I got really curious about how is this affecting us physiologically, and what can FDN do to look at that from that perspective. So using labs and seeing what's happening and seeing that kind of people's hormones crash, and they're really into blood sugar dysregulation, insulin resistance that's not typical of diabetes. It might be affecting them, and it might indeed lead to type 2 diabetes, but actually there's something different here. There's something different. And until you can get this cortisol dysregulation sorted out, you haven't got a hope in hell, actually. It doesn't matter how much you do DRESS, how good your clients, how well behaved they are, how cooperative they are. This is a real issue. And So I've got personal understanding of that, and that's been a real kind of journey along with using FDN and getting more kind of knowledgeable about how that works really, and what you can do to address it.
That's fantastic. I love that. And I think that that's one of those things about FDN where you really connect those dots. And that's what makes it so amazing. So, you know, you are part of the FDN community, but how has the FDN community really supported you in your business and health endeavors?
I think when I first started doing the training, I was pretty poorly still. And it took me, I thought, okay, I can nail this in 4 months, you know, I'll be one of those. Goodness knows I wasn't. It took me a lot longer than that. I had to kind of manage my own health, and I could only study and so on, you know, as I was going. And I think when you're going through the training, it's common perhaps to feel that imposter syndrome stuff. And then what happened was I engaged with Brandon. And he was just amazing, Brandon Will. He was just so cool. He was just brilliant and really held me and encouraged me and taught me through the different stages of the exams. And I learnt masses. But I think perhaps most of all, he gave me confidence. You know, he gave me permission to start at base level and to learn as I went. And that was just amazing. So I think, you know, all applause and credit to Brandon, really, because that was the really kind of start off for me. And then, of course, once you get through and you can become part of the AFDNP community, you know, then the kind of world opens for you. But I also had a really brilliant peer group of study group, you know, informal study group, who were amazing, and we're all still in contact with each other, and that's really nice. So we've kind of supported each other through that kind of, oh my goodness, I can't do this, to, you know what, you can. So it's really nice, and we've all kind of graduated now, and yeah, that's really good. And we're all over the world, so that's wonderful to see too.
I love that. I love that you can see that progression and see that those changes in yourself. So Brandon Moley is one of our FDN mentors. He is just fantastic. But I love that that's one of those unique things about FDN is that you've got somebody, a mentor, to kind of walk you, guide you, lead you, and then you have all the connection with the trainees. And as a graduate, you have connection with everybody who's an AFDNP member.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And I've linked up now as well with some FDNs who are more experienced and who qualified, you know, a lot longer, you know, and that's been really great too. They've kind of helped me to find my way in the UK. Yeah. Awesome. So that's really cool.
So tell me about your ideal client. Like, who is that ideal person that you're working with?
My ideal client is someone who has probably been to just about everyone they can imagine for help with trauma and PTSD. They are at the point of hopelessness. They may have, they're likely to have felt suicidal, if not attempted it many times. They'll have a lot of complex trauma that's childhood and adult related, but somehow they've made their way through life with courage. And my real kind of sweet spot of loving working with people is when people are really up to doing the work, and they often, so my strength is doing the trauma work in terms of emotional, psychological and spiritual. But what's great is kind of over all these years, I've worked loads with veterans. And what I've really seen is that fibromyalgia is really common. There's a lot of gut issues, a lot of issues with regard to fatigue syndromes. And it was really frustrating because I kind of couldn't do anything about that. Whereas now we're starting to integrate, actually doing some labs at the same time. What I've learned with the UK population is go slowly. So it may well be that we do an HTMA to begin with because it's not too expensive. It gives a whole load of hints and clues to what else might be going on. And actually to not do an overwhelming, with a PTSD client or complex trauma client, you don't want to do an overwhelming amount of anything, all right, because they'll just crash. So taking your time and doing labs sensitively and at their pace, I'll usually start with HTMA and GI map, or there's one now called GI Ecologics in the UK, which is a lot cheaper than GI map, and it's specifically geared for the UK market. Those two are kind of good hits, because of course what we know is that when you're firing cortisol all the time and you're constantly in that HPA crisis, is your gut is taking a real hammering. And there's increasing evidence on the impact of childhood trauma and actually kind of really damaging your gut. And all sorts of things happen with that in terms of kids who've grown up in families of addiction or abuse or neglect. You know, their gut is in a pretty bad state because they've spent such a lot of time in fear. Living in fear has been a constant state pretty much. So gut will be my kind of HTMA, and gut will be a sort of first hit. And, you know, we'll gently go on if needed, but if we can address those two, that's a really good start.
I love that approach. That's great. So how can interview listeners get in touch with you? Do you have a website, social media? How can people find you?
Yeah, I do. It's www.belindasimpson.co.uk. I'm happy to work as well if people are working doing FDN, and I would really urge them, if people really have legitimately got post-traumatic stress disorder, complex trauma, unless you are trained as a psychologist or a counselor or a psychotherapist, don't go near it, because complex trauma is, like, for me, it's like a puzzle. Every time someone comes, it's like a puzzle, but you cannot, it's not logical. All right. And if you start taking the lid off it and playing around with it, albeit well-intended, you're going to get in trouble. So if there are people who are loving doing the FDN stuff, but would like a bit of help with regard to someone doing that, desensitizing and doing the psychological, I'm really happy to co-work with people. Or they can refer to me, you know, but I'm conscious of, I'm in the UK, so kind of time-wise and so on, that doesn't work for everyone. But I've got my website, and I've got my own dedicated FDN page on my website, but I'll tell people an awful lot more about me in terms of my main role as a therapist. Yeah.
Awesome. How do you feel about taking a question? Somebody has a question for you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So Gina wants to know, with emotional trauma, how do you feel about something like quantum energy in support of the healing journey in conjunction with the FDN kits we provide?
I'd like to know some more about what you mean, Gina, by quantum energy.
Awesome. So we'll wait and see what Gina has to say.
Sure. What I think generally is anything that actually helps calm systems down is a really good thing. But don't underestimate. Like, I've had such battles with it myself. My body was chucking out sodium in tests, you know, absolutely unbelievable amounts that were literally off the graph, because my body was in constant stress. No amount of meditation was going to deal with that. I needed to learn how to meditate, really commit to that, do other calming things. But I also found some really great supplements that actually really help. And I've really only this year found them. I've tried loads of things, and it's only this year I found some things that are actually working with regard to helping me sleep better and helping that. How I'd explain it is that exaggerated startle response is calming down. The impact isn't as great. So I found these supplements that are really brilliant. Which can I tell you about those?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, do you have a tip, tool, or resource that you would love to share?
Yeah, there's two things I found recently. One is this. I don't get any money for doing this. It's not, I'm just seeing, how can I get it? I don't know if people can see it. It's called Stabilium 200. You can actually get it from Amazon, or you can get it from, you know, some of the really good supplement places. But it's actually this fascinating thing. This is from a fish that lives really, really, really deep in the ocean. And this fish, because it lives so deep and it has such pressure on it and so little oxygen, it's had to learn really great coping mechanisms. That's cool. Yeah. And so you do 15 days of this to titrating in, 15 days of 4 capsules. I take them first thing in the morning, 30 minutes before food. Great. They don't taste of fish oil or anything revolting. There isn't a placebo effect with me, really, to be honest, because I've tried so many different things. I'm just kind of completely right. Okay, this might or it might not, we'll see, but it has really, really helped. So this is a great product that I think for if you've got clients who've got anxiety issues or any kind of trauma stuff and problems with sleep, problems with cortisol dysregulation, DHEA regulation, although it's not a hormonal bioavailable kind of thing, it's about calming your system down, but this is just so brilliant. Really, really good. And then the other one is really good, and I don't know if you can see it.
Is that Digestimes?
Can you see this?
Is it Digestimes?
Catechicalcom.
Oh, I have that. Catechicalcom. I've got some in my pantry. I also am a fan.
Yeah. So that was a really good start. It didn't help my sleep particularly, but I think it certainly helped the start of kind of calming my system down from a physiological point of view. So those two things, they're my favorite go-tos now for people who've got, they're just, and I can't tell you, you have to kind of be in it to understand it with clients, living in that constant state of hypersensitivity, hyperarousal, kind of people making you jump even though they don't mean to, or it's like as hell. It's horrible. Yeah. So with regard to, I don't know if Jean is still around. It doesn't look like she's come back to us, but anything that, and it's like you have to find out what's individual and right for that particular person, but anything that's going to help soothe them, calm their system down, kind of really get people into structure and routine, so that the more their body knows what to expect, encouraging them to kind of eat regularly. Don't try anything freaky. Like I've done everything. I've tried intermittent fasting and I did paleo for 6 months, and then, I did everything absolutely 100%. It didn't make any difference at all, because if you're, as we know, if your cortisol is far enough, then you've got insulin resistance. And it's not going to be related to what you're eating. I can eat spinach all month or chocolate cake all month. My weight does not change, literally does not change. So yeah, okay. It looks like Gina's back to us.
She said there are instruments such as the Healy machine that I've heard of here in the US. So she says it has origins from Germany. Okay.
I don't know anything about that, I'm afraid. My training is in integrative humanistic counseling and psychotherapy, and with regards to trauma, my go-to is EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. But there's loads of things out there. What I'd say is, repeated what I said before, which is if you don't really know what you're doing, don't go there. It's fine to do general kind of dress stuff and encourage people to find things to calm their system, but don't start digging about in trauma if it's not something you're qualified in. Yeah.
That's
to make people worse, sadly.
That's a really good piece of advice, because I think so many people come to us and we want to give them the whole package. And so I think that's a great piece of advice, that it is okay to refer someone out if that's not your.
Yeah. And there are, things like EMDR started in America, and there's a lot of clinical research on it. Personally, I would rather encourage people to go for the stuff that there is clinical evidence about, not what's popular. Go for what is clinically evidence-based, proven to work. That way you're going to look after people really are. If they've got complex trauma, I went to the dentist a couple of months ago and had to have some work done. And, he had to have full PPE on. I've known this guy for ages. He's absolutely adorable dentist. He's just brilliant and so good with me. But because he had full PPE and it was sweating buckets, he had to get through it quick. We didn't have our usual routine where I can tap his hand and sit up. And so what happened was it triggered me into flashbacks that were nothing to do with dentistry. And I couldn't get out of them. So he's treating me and there are tears, just pouring down my face with flashbacks going on back to childhood. So yeah, I know I kind of keep saying it, but don't mess with this stuff. All right. Complex trauma, it's fascinating. If you know what you're doing, it's my world. I love it. It's like putting a jigsaw together with people, but it's not, you know, please refer out. Yeah. And for FDN to hook up with a, you know, local counselor or psychotherapist who specializes in trauma would be an amazing thing. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. That, you know, I think you've given us so much good advice. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your fabulous knowledge today, Belinda. Can you tell everybody one more time how they can find you?
Okay, so they can find me on Facebook, Belinda Simpson, and my business page is Belinda Simpson Natural Health. They can find me on the AFDNP forum on Facebook, and they can find my website on www.belindasimpson.co.uk. And it has been great talking to you, Piper.
Thank you so much for joining me. I think it was so insightful, and I really enjoyed everything that you had to share today. So everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Make sure if you're still watching and you're watching the replay, drop the word impact below this video, and we are going to send you that adverse childhood assessments chart. So I would love for you to be able to get that, utilize it for yourself, maybe utilize it with your clients if you're a health coach or professional. So thank you guys for joining us. And we have one more question. So before I sign off real quick.
Yeah, just seen Gina's come back. Gina, if I'm understanding your question properly, it's these two products that would be encouraging actual physiological healing alongside gut healing, and whatever else your labs are showing needs, but they'd be my absolute go-tos.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gina, if you're an AFDNP member, you can absolutely tag Belinda in an AFDNP post. You guys can connect. So that would be really fantastic as well. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you again, Belinda. It was great talking to you today. And I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. And I hope you have a good day.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.